Catus Maximus here, this time with a review of another Crescent attempt at a ratcheting adjustable wrench. They call this the R2 Ratchet wrench. Wrench spelled with an R. And yeah, these are still in the stores. The short story, even at the orange box, they're 25 bucks. And on Amazon, there's some sellers trying to get 35 plus. Do not spend that kind of money on this wrench. It really does not work very well at all. And for that money, you can actually get a decent socket set at Harbor Freight. This thing is a gimmicky product. These jaws, because of all the parts that are involved with it, the manufacturing tolerances aren't the greatest, and just due to the nature of the system and using two different screws that have opposing leads that draw the jaws in and out, it really wants to get jammed up pretty badly. Particularly, they have this little guard or retainer right here in the middle, because there's actually a couple of gears that connect both screws. That thing gets dinged up and it just totally becomes non-operable. The way these jaws flex, they really just end up stripping out bolts. For basic assembly work, they're fine. And where these type of I guess this tool really does come in handy is for more odd shaped stuff that's wide, such as actually thumb screws. This thing would be much better used on a thumb screw. These oftentimes will get jammed on me, and oftentimes they're in a place where they're pretty well recessed and hard to reach with, just using a wrench or a pair of pliers. And so this would be handy in those situations, as well as eye bolts. Eye bolts and screw and hooks. It has these little serrations on the jaw, so you can kind of grab it. You can't really get much force in tightening down because you're just using your thumb on the upper gear. But it is pretty handy in that situation. Aside from that, there's just a whole host of kind of negatives about this. I bought this at a garage sale for $5, and I think it's great for the situations when I'm hanging Christmas lights and planters and I need to screw in some larger hooks. But as far as actually breaking real fasteners, you're just asking for trouble with this wrench. Even though there's some people who had positive reviews of this thing, anybody, I think even a lot of my subscribers would end up destroying a bunch of fasteners and destroying this wrench in short order. 60-tooth ratchet mechanism. It's riveted together. You can't really take it apart. It seems that it's slid together through this way, and then the ratchet mechanism is attached, or the two plates are put together, because you can't take it apart. And I'm having a little bit of a difficult time trying to figure out exactly how they assembled it, besides this plastic upper cap being a snap-on one, or snapped on. It does have a positive engagement ratchet. We can see how the ratchet lever moves as we move it around. And, that operation is okay. And it does have a right and left markers. And a press-on overmolded handle, which I have to admit, is reasonably comfortable. But most of the issues just deal with this mechanism. They threw a lot of steel at this. The head of this is actually bigger than most half-inch drive ratchets, just in the diameter, because of the amount of material they had to throw at it, just so it wouldn't be just a total gimmick. But they need to throw about twice as much. So one thing I was going to show that's interesting is, in order for the jaws to get as much opening, they have a much thicker cross-section up here than they do down in the bottom portion. They want to make sure the jaws move in parallel, so they use two screws which have threads that are designed so that they screw together. They're little sintered bolts, and then they have these little gears, and they look just like this because this is the upper gear. What's interesting is, since they have more cross-section on this lower portion, they use a fine thread. But if we take a flashlight here and see if we can't get a little look inside there, I don't know if we can. It's kind of difficult to get. It is really difficult to get this to want to. Oh, there you go. You can just see that the screw on the inside has a coarser thread, and I thought that was an interesting engineering. What they've done is use the gears to adjust the gear ratio, so both the coarse thread screw and the fine thread screw end up pulling in a parallel fashion. The thinner cross-section on the back of the jaws means that they used a coarser thread screw, so that the threads would be a little bit more durable, but on this section they use a finer machine thread screw so that you could get a little bit more leverage. A finer screw threads means that more turns for a given amount of motion thus more force. But even then, you just can't really get much of a grip. When you hold it upside down this way, the lower gear rides on this metal collar, and it's really hard to adjust. But when you have it upside down, it's super easy to adjust. You don't want to use it on fast like nuts because it has not a whole lot of reach, and you're going to be ratcheting down, of course, denting that middle thing, locking it up again. It's just reminiscent of this Crescent ratcheting wrench, which was also a gimmick just because even though I liked its engineering, it just has all these tight sliding parts that really have a lot of stiction. It doesn't work very well, and anytime this actually gets used, there's going to be dings all along these portions, and it's just not going to be worth anything. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with this. You're going to try to break a big bolt, and it's going to jam up the jaws. Grit's going to get in these threads, and they're just not going to work anymore. I'm tired of complaining about it, to tell you the truth. I'm just trying to save people some money, because for 25 bucks, it may kind of look appealing on the shelf, and that's a good price. Your money would be best spent elsewhere. And the only caveat is really specialty situations. You find yourself driving odd kind of fasteners like these pretty often, is the only time that this I could see really paying for itself. I guess I should do a quick demonstration here. I've got a simulated fastener. That's what I call this hex socket, is a simulated fastener. And I'm going to go ahead and wrench it down onto this thing. I'm going to flip this around so I can pull and actually get some real, or we'll push. That's fine. Get some real torque on here. There we go. And I have a pretty good grip. Let's get about average for, say, a nut. And then as we start, come on now, as we start torquing, you can just see those jaws start to flex. You can see the light start to come through. And as I put more force on it, it really, you can feel them doing this action where they're starting to split apart. And it's particularly bad if you're using a tip. If you have something that's really is drawn all the way down into the jaws like this, it does get just a little bit better grip just because it's closer to the actual support member. But that's the only time it really seems to function without me just worrying about it stripping anything out. I should say everything. Anyway, just seems Crescent, every time they try to get away from just their traditional wrench, they, have issues. And I was going to say at the end of this video, I received a couple of comments, or maybe it was just one, about how these adjustable wrenches always seem to self-adjust, and that's always been an issue. Probably the most common would be like this Proto Challenger click stopper. They put a ball detent into the wheel, so when you adjust it, it actually stays relatively in place. And if it comes out of adjustment, you can just go a couple clicks one direction or the other, and it's sized properly. So that's really the answer to these adjusting wrenches. If you need to use them and repeatedly, and you get tired of having them, work their way too tight where you have to loosen them or be too loose, is one of these ball detent click stop style. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.